It's just Know Your Right, Cannabis, the Cannabis Equity of Illinois. Welcome everybody in. So, who is the coalition? The coalition is a grassroots organization fighting to make sure legalization of cannabis in Illinois is done to repair and reinvest in the community most impacted by the war on drugs and ensure the cannabis industry prioritizes people over profits. Got that right. So,
Yahaira, you want to take over the learning objectives? Oh, Yahaira just texted me. It looks like they got kicked off, but they'll be right back. Yeah, so basically, our learning objectives for tonight, we want everybody to understand, what changes in the laws have been made and how those are going to impact you and how you can take steps to protect yourself and your families from criminalization. And then lastly, we want to make sure that you all know where you can look for additional resources to learn more about your rights, learn more about the laws and how you can protect yourself and your community. So this is a little bit about what we're going for tonight. If folks have questions or comments or feedback, I'm going to ask folks if you can put them into the chat. That way we can kind of keep track of everything and then answer them as we go along. And we can go from there. But okay. And Alex, if you can let in Yahaira, sounds like they're waiting to be let in.
Not really a waiting room, which is interesting, but I'll text her.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to jump straight into things. And yeah, so, basically the context for this conversation, and as we know, the war on drugs is a war on people, specifically Black and brown people. And so just to share the context again, Illinois is not a good place for, we are not a leading light in terms of equitably arresting. We arrest Black people specifically at an incredibly high rate, Black and brown people as well. And so we have a lot of work to do to end that. And it takes all of us being educated and informed on our rights, on how we can prevent criminalization and prevent bad things from happening. So we just wanted to show this map on the left real quick, specifically because Illinois, again, whether you're in Chicago, that's in red, if you're in East St. Louis, if you're in Springfield, if you're in Carbondale, if you're in Rockford, the disparities, unfortunately, are there. We know these police departments, we know these prosecutors, we know these judges are just not, they do not want to protect people and prioritize community well-being. So we just want to kind of share this context with everybody before we jump straight into the presentation. I don't know if Yahaira's joined us yet.
Oh. No, I'm still trying to help her.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just texting. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, definitely. While we wait for Yahaira to join us, Minnie, we can kind of co-lead this.
don't take that one. I follow him behind.
All right. Sounds good. Well, yeah, first and foremost, just to share the context, as y'all know, Illinois legalized in the summer of 2019 when Governor Pritzker signed the bill. It became officially legal on January 1st of 2020. So now, all 21 years old and 21 years and older, any adult can purchase and consume cannabis. So there's a couple things that are in the bill, the legalization bill, that are really important to note. One was there was some effort to create a social equity program. There was an effort to expunge records, and there's also a plan to try and reinvest money back into communities that were most impacted. So those are just some top level details we wanted to share around the legalization bill.
It's creative for us to have.
Your rights. What does cannabis legalization really look like in Illinois? It's a bunch of crap. That's what it looked like.
Some creative for us. The girl knew didn't work
Wow. Consumption on your private property. You've been doing that all the time. So and that they telling you can do something you ain't been doing. DUI. I ain't drunk. I'm just high. So how you gonna give me a DUI? Zero tolerance policies allowed. What that's supposed to mean? How you gonna make something legal and then tell me
how you gonna give me something?
I because it's after you tell me it's legal. Medical patients. Good or bad. Everybody been smoking, so medical or not. Why is it that they got to be exempt? the taxes got to be different. You still purchasing it. You know what I'm saying? When you go to the dispensary, I don't care if I'm buying it recreation or medical. I mean, why I got to get charged $25 more for the same thing you paid less for? You know your municipal codes. I mean, people can get more into the codes because I ain't got the codes yet, but all right, it'll be all right.
You're all good, Benny. And yeah, basically just summed up, we're going to get into all these in a lot more depth throughout the presentation. But yeah, just the high level, you just got to know some of these things before, these are some of the key details we wanted to share. So, but we'll get into kind of the key details here. Yahida, I don't know if you're back with us, if you want to take the lead on things.
Yeah, sorry about that, y'all. So possession limits. So these get a little bit tricky. It will depend on whether or not your physical state ID will say Illinois or a different state. If you are a resident of Illinois, you can have up to 30 grams of flower, a little bit under 500 milligrams of THC infused products. So that's any edibles, any no, tinctures are different. Tinctures are, no, this includes anything that's infused actually. So tinctures, edibles, even topicals, and then up to 5 grams of concentrate. So any type of concentrate. If you're a non-Illinois resident, you can have half of all of these. So that's 15 grams of flower, 250 milligrams of infused product, and 2.5 grams of cannabis. Peter, I can't remember if we said whether or not we can hit all these maxes.
Yeah, so these numbers are cumulative. So you can't have like 29 grams of weed and 499 milligrams of edibles and 4.5 grams of concentrate. So basically the state doesn't want you to have like, you can't maximize all of these. They're basically trying to like limit you from having all of it. So the key point is like, if you have 25 grams of flour on you, don't have an entire pound of edibles. Like, be very clear that like if you have multiple different types of THC and cannabis, please be very careful about just like the weights that are actually in there, because again, this only applies to cumulative, and we know again law enforcement will happily take somebody in for not following this. So yeah.
Do you have a question?
Hi, Peter. This is Dee. I have a question regarding the people from out of state purchasing. Now, I don't understand why the difference is, but I believe that neither the person from out of state or anyone from Illinois can cross state lines with the cannabis. Is that correct?
Yes, no going over state lines. Even if Indiana legalized tomorrow, you still can't go across state lines. It's still federally illegal. And so you are running the risk of actually a much bigger penalty if you go across state lines, because then it becomes interstate trafficking, which becomes a federal offense, and you're looking at a lot more time. So please be very careful going across state lines, even if this other state is legal.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you do go cross state line, and if you got your medical card in your pocket, then they have still a little bit more leniency, because my nephew got caught in Indiana, but they asked him, did he have a medical card from Illinois? And which at that point he didn't have it, but I sent him a picture of his mama saying that he was taking care of his mama, and that's the reason he had the weed. So they kind of dismissed the weed charges. So I advise anybody that got medical, keep your card on you in any state.
Yeah, absolutely. And Minnie, thank you for bringing that up, because there is a thing called reciprocity. Is if you are in a state that has a medical program and you have your Illinois medical program, you might be able to be like, they can treat you like a medical patient in that state. But yeah, having a medical card can be like a protection. But again, please be just super, super careful, especially in the neighboring states, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa, Indiana. They don't want anybody to be happy.
Yeah, and on top of that, Illinois is not one of the states that accepts state medical cards. Just keep that in mind. So Municipality violation codes for Chicago. Basically, if you get caught smoking, these are theoretically the fines and the fees that go with that. So your first offense would be $50, $100 there, moving forward from there within a 30-day period. If you are under 21, this is where it gets a little funny because it's a kind of a gray area. There is no set research that we found to support this, but under 21, if you are to get caught, you are sentenced to community service, not sentenced, I'm sorry, assigned community service, and to attend a drug awareness and education class or restorative justice program. We don't have clarification on what that means. We know that, community service is essentially a government job and you're doing free labor. And as far as the awareness education classes or the programs or restorative justice programs, again, we don't have a clarification of what this looks like, what those programs entail, who has actually taken them, or what for real happens. So it's kind of a gray area here with us, to be completely transparent. So if anyone has any more information or any experiences to share, that would be completely welcome. Everything is super important to know.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to add one thing on, this is specific to public consumption. So this includes, if you're in the doorway of your apartment building, if you're in the alleyway, you're on the sidewalk, this is what that's applying to. So anything that's in the public way, please just be very careful, because this, again, there is a fine involved, and potentially this could become probable cause for somebody to get searched. You search your person or your belongings. So again, please just be very, very careful about where you are consuming if it's in public.
Okay, and when you are transporting your medicine, please remember there needs to stay in child-proof, smell-proof, tamper-proof packages. So not a Ziploc bag, not the plastic container that it may come in the dispensary even. If it's in a bag and it's see-through, or even if it's in a bag smaller than the ones that you see in the picture here, it's pretty much a way for them to try to search anything else that's on you. Consuming cannabis in a car remains illegal, even if it's parked, even if the keys aren't in the ignition, even if you're in your driveway, still is illegal to consume cannabis in a car. Transporting it is also illegal. Even a small amount can get you in trouble, especially if it's in a smaller baggie. They're going to be asking questions. So definitely keep that in mind when you're transporting your things, your belongings. It should also theoretically be kept in the trunk of your car and nowhere near the driver's seat. You just nowhere where the driver may have access to that.
Yeah, there has to be reasonably inaccessible. So if you have 4 people in the car, definitely put it in the trunk, because even if it's in the back seat, they're still going to say somebody's sitting back here and they could have used cannabis, which is very much going to get you in trouble. So please be very careful. We will be doing, the coalition we want to do some like recycling programs in the future so that we can get packages like these. So if you or somebody is like sitting on a whole bunch of packaging that is, fits this odor-proof, child-proof, tamper-proof qualifiers, definitely put something into the chat. We would love to reach out with you, because again, we want to find a way to get these out to folks. We got to move away from Ziploc bags. We got to move away from grocery bags. It's got to be, we got to take a step up with this.
Go to the dispensary a lot. They packages actually supposed to be tamper-proof. You see how you got to squeeze them and push them. So that's the kind of packages they actually talking about anyway. Something that got to be pushed down, like a medicine bottle, anything that can be closed that a child can't open really, really readily. That's all it is. So if you even got containers where you went to the dispensary, save them, reuse them.
Excellent. Yeah, so then the next one is just cannabis and housing. And this one's pretty straightforward. It's if you live on,
Excuse me.
oh, go ahead.
Hi, sorry.
Go ahead.
You're welcome to ask your question.
Hello. Hi, sorry. Okay, so I'm a hairstylist, and so I'm a huge supporter of recycling and staying green. This is what led me to you guys through Herbal Notes. And like I see it in my salon, the amount of containers and bottles that we go through that go in the garbage is ridiculous. Like we're making about 10 trips a day to the garbage, and that's just one salon, not counting all the salons in our neighborhood, the area, the city entirely. So I would love like to, if there could be a law to like tax salons more, or just the beauty industry itself, or get them to recycle more, because we contribute a lot to like all the waste out in the world. The beauty industry does.
For sure. No, I definitely appreciate you bringing that up. That's definitely something that, you know, is really important for us to discuss, is sustainability and recycling and all these things. Because yeah, if we don't have a, you know, a planet to live on and to grow this plant, then, you know, we don't have no cannabis. And so definitely appreciate that feedback, and we can have a conversation offline. If you want to get involved on the policy side, you know, we can definitely share some ways to do that. So definitely appreciate you bringing that up. And I know Yahida, I think, has to jump off at 7, but Minnie and I can lead us the rest of the way. We're just going to jump straight into housing. So this is really, really important, and I want to be really clear. So if you are somebody who lives in, if you're a renter, which a lot of folks are, so you live in an apartment building, or if you lived on any kind of public housing voucher, so whether that's a state program, whether it's a federal program, first and foremost, read your lease. You know, read your agreement so you know exactly what it says about smoking and consumption of any smoking product, whether it's tobacco or cannabis, because people are still being evicted from these places, whether it's renters are being evicted from apartment buildings. You have people on public housing vouchers who are getting evicted from those situations. So please be really, really careful. Read, double read, triple read your agreements, so you know exactly what the penalty will be. If you are consuming cannabis in the house. Again, we want to make sure folks are as safe as possible. This also includes colleges and universities. I don't think any university lets people smoke on campus. So please be super, super careful about this.
What they saying in reality is, if you ain't got your own house, you can't smoke. That's just, so how is this legal? If you telling me only way I can smoke is I gotta have a house. I can't live in nobody's apartment. And if I'm renting somebody's house and they feel that they don't want no smoking in their house still, it still don't matter, because they can put me out too.
Absolutely. And this is one of those things, specifically on the policy side, this is one of the things we're working on this year is, one is public consumption protection. So people should be allowed to consume cannabis in public without being arrested. And then 2 is creating social consumption so that we actually have, you know, bars and clubs and lounges that folks can patronize and you know, enjoy some cannabis in. So definitely, please be very careful about the housing. Yeah. Cool. Sounds good. We're gonna move on to just cannabis in the workplace and what you need to know about your job with weed. So first and foremost, employers are still allowed to have drug-free work zones or work policies. It just has to apply to everybody in the company. So nobody can be exempt from it at all. And so that means your employer can still test you for drugs or, you know, for cannabis if they have a good faith reason to think that you came to work while, you know, currently, you know, you use cannabis at work, or you just came from smoking. You know, if they're like, hey, you know, you smell like weed, your eyes are red and you're lethargic, now we have to drug test you. They can still do that. So I want to be really clear, they can still do that. You're allowed, you know, you have rights to push back against that. But please be very careful with that work, because this is definitely something that they still have a lot of rights on. There is some legislation right now that would look to really specify like what they can do in terms of drug testing, especially pre-employment drug testing. So if you're applying for a job and they said we got to do a drug test, there's some lawmakers who want to clarify what jobs actually require a drug test. And so this is really important to know. Again, please just be very careful when you're at work. If you bring cannabis in your car and you go to work, please be careful about how your car smells, because if you walk in from a car that smells into your workplace, again, we're just trying to prevent any harm. And the other thing I will add to this is I'll drop a link into the chat in just a second about the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Illinois Human Rights Act and how those are protected with cannabis, but I'll put that in a second.
All right. Cannabis and immigration. Pretty much, if you're an immigrant, you're screwed. It's not legal for you to smoke in Illinois and nowhere else in the United States, truly. It's not legal for you to have it, to smoke it, to do anything with it, to have it even on your possession. It's not no in between with it. You know what I'm saying? It's just illegal, period. It was legal, but it still is more illegal for immigrants than it is for U.S. citizens. So I could read all this and it's still gonna say the same thing. If you're an immigrant, it's illegal for you with a period on the end.
Yep. And we want to be really clear. There's no wiggle room on this. There is no talking your way out of this. Like, we know that this is a federal law. They're not going to play games with this. And so if you are somebody who uses cannabis and you're not a permanent resident of the U.S., please be very careful about going to a dispensary, anywhere that your ID is going to get scanned, your picture is going to be taken. We don't suggest you work in the industry. Again, background checks, IDs, pictures, all these things. And they also includes, if you want to clear a record, please, the main thing we're trying to drive home is speak with an immigration attorney, a trusted immigration attorney, because they're going to be able to understand the nuances of the law and what you need to keep yourself safe. But again, like Minnie said, please do not publicize anything about you and cannabis, whether that's you consuming, you working, anything to do with cannabis. Please keep it out of the public view, because again, they do not care about your well-being, and they will find a way to punish you.
It's called do private consumption.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Sabina, you have a hand raised?
I just wanted to add to your point when it comes to cannabis and immigration, from stuff that we've seen. This also includes not posting anything on social media, or even being on mailing lists. Like with our name, we're Cannabis Workers Coalition. We have the word cannabis in our name. We've had some people run into some trouble for being on our email list. So just to be very, very, very careful.
For sure, definitely appreciate that. And yeah, definitely not social media, because that, even if you post something and you delete it, that still lives somewhere and somebody's going to find it. So please be very careful about that. Cool. And then really the last thing we wanted to share with y'all before we get into any questions and answers was around some magic words. So our partners at First Defense Legal Aid, they have a whole bunch of education on what you need to do if you find yourself in a confrontation with law enforcement. What are you supposed to do to make sure you don't incriminate yourself, you don't tell on yourself, and you don't, do their job for them and get yourself in trouble? So what I will say is we'll share some resources from First Defense Legal Aid after the call. We definitely want folks to do some more reading and some more research on this. But again, if you just memorize these phrases, memorize these terms, because you do not need to incriminate yourself. You do have constitutional rights. You need to know how to enforce them. And so this is something First Defense Legal Aid does all the time. And so definitely, we'll share some resources at the end of this conversation, but wanted to make sure we didn't let anybody leave without seeing these words, seeing these phrases, because this is what you need to rely on if you find yourself in a conversation with law enforcement.
And the most important thing is you got to say them exactly like you see them up there. You don't twist them around or say them any way different, because it really ain't gonna matter to them. You gotta say them, ask them just like this: am I free to go? I know I do not consent to a search.
That's sir. There you go.
I want to talk to my lawyer, and that's it. You don't have no more conversation with them. Only other thing you gotta say is, "Can I go to the bathroom?" That's it. That's all. That way, how they want to chit chat with you, be your friend. You do none of that. You stop talking and ask for your lawyer. That's it. When your lawyer comes, you talk to your lawyer.
Simple as that. Don't talk
Okay,
to them.
will they take calls from someone? Like, is this a number people can put in their cell phones and keep for any time of day?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. 1-800-LAW-REP-4.
Yes.
It's also spelled out down here at the bottom. Thank you, Lisa, for clarifying that. Yes, please, if you find yourself in an interaction, call this number. They can give you, one, they can give you some guidance over the phone, but two, I know they were doing like physically going to places and helping de-escalate. So definitely keep this number in line. Again, we'll share some resources at the end of this call for everybody to learn more from First Defense Legal Aid, but these are the words you need to know.
Y'all recite them to yourselves. Remember them.
Absolutely. And so just before we wrap up and go to Q&A, we just wanted to, again, we'll put all these into the chat. But again, First Defense Legal Aid for anything to do with preventing, to de-escalate a situation with law enforcement. Legal Aid Chicago, they just have a great, a lot of legal aid resources, a lot of public benefits. Cabrini Green Legal Aid has a lot of expungement resources. And then these last two are really important. Illinois Legal Aid Online. If you have a legal question about cannabis law, it could be about you're trying to file for a divorce, you could be trying to do anything, something related to your housing, anything that relates to the law. Illinois Legal Aid Online is an amazing resource. They just redesigned their website, and they do a lot of great work, and they educate people about a lot of different legal issues. So please definitely check that out if you have legal questions about anything, not just cannabis. And then lastly is OCAD, Organized Communities Against Deportation. Anybody who's specifically interested on the immigration side of this conversation, definitely please check out OCAD and all the work they do in the community to prevent deportation and to make sure folks can stay home in their communities. So a lot of great resources. We'll put the links for these in the chat in just a moment. But before we do that, just want to open it up for any Q&A. Folks had any questions, comments, concerns, feedback?